How was your day? Maybe someone decided who you were before you'd done a thing, and you spent the whole day quietly proving them wrong. There's a god in the old stories of Mexico who was loved and undone anyway. The feathered serpent, a gentle king. If today asked too much of you, he would understand. So let your shoulders down. Let the day go. The air here is warm. The stone still holds the sun, and far to the east there is a shore where this story ends and begins. Picture a black sand shore at dawn, a king robed in white, alone at the waterline behind him, a whole golden city he can never go back to. Ahead, only the sea. He built that city with his own hands. He taught them everything. And now he is leaving. Stay with that, because to understand it, we have to go back. Here's the question that has lasted 3,000 years. Why would a king who was worshipped, who harmed no one, choose to walk away from everything he loved? The answer is not in a war. There is no monster here. What undoes him is quieter than that. A cup, a mirror, and one night he can never take back. Maybe you know the shape of that. One mistake that doesn't match who you've tried to be. The old stories knew it too. They just gave it feathers and a name. This is what we do here. Every week, one old story, one night. Something that happened long ago and still somehow knows about tonight. So get comfortable now. Adjust your pillow, find your warmth. If you drift off before the end, the old gods won't mind. They have watched over sleeping people for a very long time. This is only the beginning of the story. The part most people never reach. That's still ahead, but not tonight. Tonight, just this. Just the warm start of it. If tonight feels like something, subscribe. We'll be here next week. Another story, another night like this one. Now back to ours. So let us go back, long before the shore. To a city of pale stone in the high valley. The morning it was still the most beautiful place under the sun. They called it Tula. The Toltecs lived here, and at its heart was a king who was also a god, and somehow on most mornings, simply a man who rose early to pray. He did not ask for blood, not from anyone. Where other gods wanted hearts, he asked only for flowers, for snakes, for bright butterflies. That was his whole law. Remember that? For later. The vow of no blood. It is the gentlest thing about him, and it is the thread the whole story will one day pull loose. Under him, the city grew kind. He taught them to plant the maize, to read the stars, to work jade and feather into beauty. Tula became the wonder of the world. For a long while, nothing went wrong. That, too, is part of the story. The long, good years before the shadow came. Tonight, let us begin in the light. The light came first. Let me show you the king himself, not the legend, the man at dawn. He rose before the others every morning while the city was still gray and quiet. He was not a loud god. He did not split mountains or shake the sky. His power was the quiet kind, the kind that shows up early and tends to things while others sleep. They say he had been a man once, before he was a god, or a god who chose to live as a man. The old tellers never quite agreed. Both feel true. The wind knew him best. When he walked the high roads, a clean wind went before him, sweeping the path so the rain gods could come. That is why he wore the wind on his chest. The people loved him the way you love something steady, not with fear, with trust. When his shadow crossed the plaza, the children did not run, they followed. Maybe you know someone like that. Someone who holds a room together just by being calm in it. That was him, and the holding was harder than it looked. Here's the law he gave them, and it was a strange one. No god in that whole world asked so little. Not blood, not hearts, only the small living beauty of the earth. Bring me flowers, he said. Bring me snakes from the warm grass. Bring me the bright butterflies of the fields. The earth gives enough. We do not need to take more. It sounds simple. It was not. Around him, other gods were hungry for blood, and their priests whispered that flowers were not enough to feed the sun. He held the line anyway. This is the part the old stories never make obvious. His gentleness was not weakness, it was a wall he chose to hold, alone against a whole hungry age. But a king is not only a king. Sometimes, after the city slept, he sat by his fire alone and felt the weight of being the one everyone leaned on. The crown was not heavy because it was made of feathers. It was heavy because the whole world rested on him being good every single day, with no rest. Now let me show you the others who lived in this story. The ones who loved him, and the one who did not. Begin with the kind ones, there were many. There was Xochiquetzal who tended the flowers he loved. Where she walked, the fields bloomed out of season, and butterflies came to rest in her hair. She brought the offerings he asked for, armfuls of marigold, of hibiscus, of small bright things. She understood his law in a way the priests never quite did. There was the old high priest, Huemac, who carried the copal smoke and kept the calendar, faithful, anxious, always counting the days against the old prophecies. He loved the king, but he was afraid for him. He had read the old counts, the rising and falling of suns, and he knew that golden ages in this world do not last. And then there was the other one, the one this whole gentle world was waiting for, though no one knew it yet. His name was Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror. He was the god of the night sky, of fate, of the cold turn of things. He saw everything, everyone's secret face in the black mirror he carried, and he was patient. He was not loud either. That is the thing to understand about these two. They were opposites, but neither shouted. One held the day. The other waited in the dark for it to tire. Why did he hate the gentle king? Not for anything the king did, for what the king was. The world loved Quetzalcoatl, and Tezcatlipoca could not bear to be unloved. So he made himself a promise. He would not strike the king down. That was too simple. He would wait and let the king strike himself down. That is the cruelest patience there is. But that night is still far off. Set it aside. First you should see what the gentle king did with his good years, because the loss only matters if you love what was lost. He taught them the maize first, how to choose the seed, how to read the soil, how to wait for rain. Before him, they say, the people went hungry. After him, the storehouses were full. There is an old story that the maize was hidden inside a mountain, and only the smallest, cleverest creatures could reach it. He found a way to bring it out to the people. He taught them the stars next, which one to plant by, which one to harvest by, which bright wanderer rose in the east before dawn. They learned to read the sky like a calendar, but the greatest thing he did was older than the city. It happened before there were people at all. Stay with this. It is the heart of why he is loved. He went down to get us. The old world had ended. The people of the past age were gone, their bones scattered in the land of the dead, and the gods wanted a new people. Someone had to go and bring the bones back. It was Quetzalcoatl who went, down past the rivers, down past the cold winds, down to the deepest hall, where the Lord and Lady of the Dead sat upon their throne of bone. He asked for the bones of the old people, so that he might make them live again. And the Lord of the Dead, who gives nothing freely, smiled and set him a riddle of a task. "Carry my conch shell around my kingdom 4 times, said the Lord of the Dead, sounding it like a horn. But the shell had no holes in it. It could make no sound at all. A trick. So he called the worms to bore a hole, and the bees to fly inside and make the shell sing, and it sang, the hall of the dead filled with a sound it had never heard before. The Lord of the Dead did not like that. He gave the bones, and then, the moment Quetzalcoatl turned to go, he sent his messengers to take them back. The dead do not let go easily. They dug a pit in his path. He fell, startled by a flock of quail, and the bones scattered and broke beneath him. Every one of them cracked. He lay there among the pieces. This is the part that tells you who he was. He did not give up. He did not blame anyone. He gathered every broken piece, all of it, the way you gather something you have decided to love. He carried the broken pieces up into the light, to the place where the gods waited, and there an old goddess ground the bones to fine pale dust, the way maize is ground for bread. And then he did the last thing. He opened a small wound and let his own blood fall into the dust. His blood, the thing he never asked of anyone, he gave it himself. Remember that for later. He would spill no one's blood, but his own he gave freely to make a people out of dust. That is the law and the love of him in one quiet act. From that dust and that blood, the new people rose. Us. The people of this present world. We were made. The old story says, from broken things gathered up and given a little blood. That is why they loved him so. Not because he ruled them, because he had gone down into the dark and carried them up, broken and all, and given his own blood so they could live. So, when you hear, later, that he left them, hold on to this. He was not a god who took, he was the one who went into the land of the dead and came back carrying us. Let me pause here, just for a moment, on the serpent itself, because the feathered serpent is older than this one god, and it meant something the carvers understood without words. A serpent belongs to the earth. It moves in the dust, close to the roots, close to the dead. It is the most grounded thing there is. It cannot leave the ground. But feathers belong to the sky, to the bright birds, to the wind, to the sun. They are the lightest thing there is. They long to rise. They cannot stay on the ground. So a feathered serpent is two longings in one body. The earth that holds you down, and the sky that calls you up. A creature pulled both ways at once. Maybe you know that feeling too. That is what the carvers knew, not a monster. A picture of being alive, heavy, and reaching at the same time. Keep it in your mind as the story goes on. Now, gently, back to Tula. So the years in Tula were good years. The maize stood tall, the children grew, the craftsmen wove feathers into wonders, and the king rose early every morning to keep his quiet law. They became famous for their feather work. Cloaks that shimmered like hummingbird throats. Shields a king would cross a desert to own. The world began to speak of Tula as a kind of dream. And the king walked among it all, quietly proud, quietly tired. He had built a place where no blood was spilled and everyone had enough. In all the ages of that world, it had never been done. But here's the truth about gentle worlds. They make people forget how rare they are. The longer the good years lasted, the more the people took them as simply how things were. And in the dark across the plaza, the patient one was watching that. Watching the city grow comfortable, watching the king grow tired. A tired guardian is a door left a little open. He did not move yet. That was his gift. Other gods would have struck. He simply waited, the way winter waits behind a warm autumn, certain and unhurried, knowing its turn would come. Meanwhile, the king grew older, slowly, so slowly that he himself did not notice. The mornings came a little harder, the cold sat a little deeper in his bones, but he kept rising. He did not keep mirrors near him. The old tellers make a point of that. The king had never looked at his own face in years. He knew himself only by his work, his law, his calm. He thought of himself as he had always been, steady, unchanging, the fixed point the whole city turned around, and that, not the gold, not the feathers, was the thing he could be made to lose. Because here is the quiet truth. Tezcatlipoca understood. You do not break a good person with a sword. You break them by showing them a face they did not know they had. So he began to make his plan. Not a war, a gift. The cruelest gifts always look like kindness first, and the first gift he chose was a mirror. Of course it was a mirror. But that gift comes later, for tonight, hold the city the way it still was, whole bright. The king on his terrace at evening, watching his people light their fires below. He loved them. That is what makes the rest of it ache. He stood there many evenings counting the little fires like a parent counting sleeping children, and he was content. Some nights Xochiquetzal came and sat with him there, and they spoke of small things, which flowers had bloomed, which child had been born, the ordinary good of an ordinary day. She saw what the crowds did not, that the king was tired in a way sleep could not reach, that holding the line, year after year, was wearing a quiet groove in him. Rest, she told him once. Even a god can rest, but he only smiled and shook his head. If I rest, he said, who holds the morning? And neither of them had an answer to that. That was his flaw. If a good man can have one, he could not imagine the city without him at its center. He had become the wall, and a wall cannot lie down. It can only fall. Far below, in the dark workshops where no fires burned, Tezcatlipoca walked unseen among the sleeping craftsmen, choosing his disguise. He would not come as a god, he would come as an old friend. He could wear any face he chose, the face of a merchant, the face of a healer, the face of a kind old man who only wanted to help a great king feel young again. He practiced his smile. This is the part that survives 3,000 years, the part that still feels true. The danger did not come roaring at the gate, It came knocking softly with a gift, calling the king by name. But not yet. Let the old man wait at the bottom of the steps a little longer. The king is still asleep, still whole, still dreaming of nothing worse than tomorrow's quiet work. Let him sleep. There is no kindness in waking him early to his ending. We have time. The story has waited 3,000 years. It can wait until the sun comes up. While he sleeps, let me tell you one more thing about the wind jewel at his chest, the conch shell. The same kind of shell he made sing in the land of the dead. He never took it off. It reminded him of what he could do. Make a dead thing sing, find a way where there was none, bring something back from the dark. He wore his best moment always against his heart. Maybe you have something like that. A small thing you keep close that reminds you of who you are on the days you forget. The king had his shell. Soon he would need it more than ever. He rose, he washed in cold water. He set a single flower on his altar, the way he had 10,000 mornings before. He did not know this morning was different. Why would he? The mornings that change everything almost never announce themselves. They look exactly like all the ordinary ones. That is the quiet cruelty of how a good life turns. And down at the foot of the steps, the kindly old man was still waiting, patient as winter. Holding a wrapped gift against his chest, watching the king come slowly down toward him. We will let them meet next time. That is enough for tonight. The king is awake, the city is bright, and the danger wears the gentlest face it has. Everything is still for one more breath, all right? So rest now. If you are resting, you have met them all. The gentle king, the flower goddess, the anxious priest, and the patient one in the dark. The shapes are all in place. Tomorrow in the story, the old man will speak and the king will listen. But that is tomorrow. Tonight, just hold the bright city and the good king and the long quiet years, just this. The old man bowed low when the king reached the bottom of the steps. "Great lord," he said, "I have come a long way to bring you a gift worthy of the kindest king the world has known." The king was gentle even with strangers. He thanked the old man warmly. He did not feel the cold coming off him. He did not see the eyes beneath the hood catch the light like black glass. "What is it?" the king asked. "A medicine," said the old man. "A wine pressed from the Magi, for the days when even a god grows weary. One sip, and the years lift off your shoulders." The king shook his head kindly. "I do not drink such things," he said. "My head must stay clear. The whole city counts on it." He had refused this very thing 1,000 times before. And here the old man did the clever thing. He did not push. He simply nodded and turned to go and said over his shoulder, "Of course, Lord. It is only that you looked so tired. Forgive me." Tired. The word landed somewhere soft. The king was tired. No one had said it aloud in years. And being seen even by a stranger, even falsely, it loosened something he had held tight a long time. "Wait," the king said. The old man stopped. And that single word, "wait," was the door opening, just a finger's width. The patient one had been waiting for exactly that. He turned slowly back. "Just a taste," said the old man gently. "Not to forget yourself. Only to remember what it feels like to be light. One sip. Where is the harm in one sip, for a king who has given everything?" This is the moment the whole story turns on. Not a battle, not a betrayal with a blade, a tired good man, and a cup, and a soft voice saying, "Where is the harm?" You have surely heard that voice. He took it. Of course he took it. After 10,000 mornings of holding the line, he was a man, and he was tired, and the wine was warm, and the voice was kind. He lifted the cup. And it was warm. It was sweet. For the first time in longer than he could remember, the weight slid off his shoulders, and he laughed, really laughed, at something the old man said. One sip became two. Here's the part the myths never make obvious. The wine did not turn him cruel. It did not make him a monster. It only made him forget, for one evening, that he had ever been holding anything up at all. And forgetting felt like freedom. That is the trap. For one night the gentle king got to put the city down and simply be a man at a fire, warm and unafraid. He had no idea what it would cost. He called for music. He called for his friends, and for Xochiquetzal. "Send word to everyone," he said. Tonight we are happy." And the old man's hidden eyes gleamed, because that was the whole plan. Because a king alone, drunk and happy, harms no one, but a king who calls the whole city to drink with him, who tells his people to forget themselves too, that is something the morning cannot undo. We will not follow every hour of that night. It is enough to know that the king who never lost himself, that the law he had held for a lifetime, he forgot for an evening. And somewhere in that long, loud, forgetful night, the vow broke, the thread the whole story hung on. No blood, no excess, the king as the still point, it simply came loose in the dark. The old man slipped away before dawn. His work was done. He did not need to do anything more. He had only handed the king a cup. The king had done the rest. That was always the cruelest part of the plan. Outside, far across the dark plaza, a tall, broad figure shed the old man's shape like a cloak. Tezcatlipoca stood in his own form again and looked up at the paling sky and was satisfied. He did not gloat. That was not his way. He simply turned and walked into the last of the night, leaving the dawn to do the rest, because dawn, for the king, would be the cruelest part of all. And then the sun came up. It always does. The sun does not know what happened in the night, and it rises just the same, warm and innocent, into a city that has changed forever while it slept. The king woke late. The light was already high, and in the first moment of waking, before memory came back, he felt only the strange, unfamiliar lightness of having slept past dawn. Then memory came back. He had missed the dawn. He who held the morning had slept through it. The altar was untended, the flower unplaced, the law unkept. For the first time in his long life, the sun had risen without him. And the city had risen without him too. He saw it as he walked out into the light. His people, ashamed, quiet, looking away. They had all forgotten themselves last night, and they had all watched him lead them to it. No one shouted at him. That would have been easier. They were simply quiet. The kind of quiet that means a thing has broken that words cannot mend. The king walked through it alone. He climbed the temple steps, slowly, each one heavier than the last. And at the top, in his bare, quiet room, he did the thing he had not done in years. He looked for something to see his own face in. And there it was, left on the altar, where the flower should have been. The old man's other gift, the one he had not even unwrapped, a mirror of black obsidian, waiting for him, all night, in the dark. He should not have looked. Something in him knew that. But shame pulls you toward the mirror, doesn't it? It makes you want to see the face that did the thing. He picked it up. He looked. And the face that looked back was old. That is what the mirror showed him. Not a monster, not a sinner, just an old, tired man, lined and gray, nothing like the steady young god he still believed himself to be. This was Tezcatlipoca's true weapon. Not the wine. The wine only made him sleep. The mirror made him see. He had spent a lifetime sure he was unchanging, and here, in black glass, was the proof that he was not. "I am old," he whispered. "I am old and I'm drunk, and I led my people into the dark." He set the mirror down. His hands were shaking. The wall he had been for so long was crumbling from the inside. Maybe you know that particular grief. Not the grief of being caught by others. The worse one. The grief of finally seeing yourself the way you fear you really are. He sat with that, alone, a long time. Quetzalcoatl found him there. She did not speak of the night before. She only sat down beside him on the cold floor, the way you sit with someone whose grief is too large for any words you have. "It does not change what I am," he said at last. "They saw me fall. I saw myself. A king is the one thing that cannot be forgiven for being only a man." She had no answer. There was none. "Stay," she wanted to say. "They will forget. They love you." But she knew him. She knew that he would never again be able to stand at that altar and believe he was worthy of the law he kept. And so she said nothing. For days he did not leave the temple. The city waited. The fields waited. The dawn rose each morning over an altar with no flower on it, and the people understood slowly that something had ended. The old priest Wimak came to him, censer trembling in his hands. "Lord," he said, "the people need to see you keep the law again. One flower, one morning. It is not too late to begin again." The king looked at him for a long moment. "Begin again," he repeated softly, as if it were a foreign idea. And in his voice was the saddest thing of all, not anger, just the certainty that he could not. "You can keep the law," he told the priest. "You and the others. The law is good. The law does not need me. Perhaps it never did. Perhaps it was always larger than the man who carried it." That thought, at least, gave him a little peace. But the priest wept, because he understood what the words meant. The king was not asking to rest. The king was preparing to leave, and no one in all of Tula could think of a single thing to say to stop him. That night the king did not sleep. He stood at the eastern window and looked toward the place where, every dawn, the morning star rose before the sun, the bright wanderer, the one that goes away and always comes back. He had taught his people to watch that star. He had told them it was the most faithful light in the sky, always leaving, always returning, and standing there in the dark, an idea came to him that was almost like hope. Maybe a king who has fallen cannot stay and be a king, but maybe he can leave the way that star leaves, cleanly, eastward, with a promise folded inside the going. Maybe leaving well is its own last gift. We will let him decide in peace. The grief has done its work, and something gentler is taking its place. Not happiness, but a kind of clarity. The clarity of a person who finally knows what they have to do. Across the city, in the cold dark, Tezcatlipoca felt the king's decision settle, the way you feel a season change. He had not expected this. He had expected despair. Instead, the king had found something like grace. It troubled him, a little. He had broken the king, but he had not broken the goodness in him. The king was going to lose everything, and somehow do it with dignity. That was not part of the plan. So he resolved to follow, to walk the king's whole long road east, and at every turn to tempt him to break, to rage, to curse, to come back and burn it all down. If the king would not despair on his own, Tezcatlipoca would help him. But that is the road to come. Tonight both of them are still in the valley, the king at his window with his quiet decision, the dark god in the cold with his restless plan, the two of them awake while the city sleeps. Rest here a while, before the road begins. The hardest part of the story is not the leaving. It is this, the night before, when a good man sits alone and accepts that he must go. Stay with him in it, gently. Let me pause the story here, just for a few breaths, to tell you something the people who first told it carried in their bones. It is about why a falling king frightened them so much. They believed the world had been made and unmade many times. Sun after sun, age after age, each one rising bright and ending in ruin. Theirs was the fifth sun, and it too would one day fall. So they did not take golden ages for granted. They knew what we keep forgetting, that nothing good lasts because it deserves to, that every bright sun is borrowed, that the dark always gets its turn. And so a king who held the dark back, a king who kept one age gentle longer than any age had ever stayed gentle. When he fell, it was not just one man falling. It felt like the sun itself beginning to set. Hold that as the road begins. When the king walks east, his people will not only be losing a king, they will feel an age ending, and they will be right, now, gently, back to the story. The morning has come. When morning came, the king did not slip away in secret. That was not his way. He put on the plain white robe of a traveler, took up his staff, and walked down the temple steps in full daylight, for all to see. The whole city gathered. Word had passed the way grief passes, without anyone saying it aloud. They lined the plaza in silence. They had come to watch their king leave, because no one could find the words to ask him to stay. He stopped in the middle of the plaza, where they could all see him, and he did the most generous thing a falling king can do. He did not apologize, and he did not explain. He simply gave them his blessing and freed them from needing him. The maize will still grow, he told them. The stars will still turn. The law is yours now, not mine. Keep it gently, the way I tried to. And when you watch the morning star, he said, think of me. I will be going where it goes. Then he turned east, and he began to walk, out of the plaza, out of the city he had built with his own hands, out toward the far sea, one old man in a white robe, walking away from everything he loved. Quetzalcoatl walked with him to the city's edge. There she stopped, because the road ahead was his alone. She pressed a single fresh flower into his hand, the last offering from the one who had always understood the law. He took it. He looked at it a long moment, the small, bright, living thing that had been his whole law. Then he tucked it into his robe against his chest, beside the wind jewel, and he walked on alone. The first stretch of road was gentle. Green fields he had taught them to plant. He passed farmers who set down their tools and bowed their heads as he went by, and he blessed each field he passed one last time. This part of leaving is almost sweet. The familiar things seen for the last time become unbearably beautiful. He noticed everything: the shape of the hills, the smell of the soil, the way the light fell, as if memorizing it all. But the road does not stay gentle. By afternoon the green gave way to gray stone. The fields fell behind. The way began to climb, up toward the cold pass between the two great snow volcanoes that guarded the east. And it was here, on the cold climbing road, that he first felt he was being followed. A shape, far back, a figure that kept his distance. The king did not turn around. He knew, without looking, who it was. We will leave them there for tonight. The king climbing, the dark god following, the snow not far ahead. The leaving has begun in earnest now. The hardest road is the one he chose to walk himself. But before we rest, one small scene worth keeping. Halfway up the cold road there was a great old tree, and the king stopped beneath it to catch his breath, and he leaned his back against the trunk and closed his eyes. And the old tellers say that when he leaned there, tired, the bark of the tree took the print of his hands and his back and held it, so that long after he was gone, travelers passing could see where the feathered serpent rested, and rest there too. I like that part. Even leaving, even broken, he left gifts behind him without meaning to. A place to rest, pressed into a tree, that was simply what he was. He could not stop being it, even on the road out of the world. Now rest, he is on the mountain. The snow is ahead, the dark god is behind, and in his robe against his chest there is still one fresh flower and one white shell, the whole of his gentle law carried east. Sleep on that if you can. The next morning, high in the cold pass, the snow began to fall. And here Tezcatlipoca made his first move on the road. He did not appear as himself. He sent the cold ahead of him, a wind so bitter the king could barely stand. Turn back. The wind seemed to say, in the dark god's patient voice, go home. They will forgive you. Why suffer this cold for a pride that is already broken? Turn back, old man. There is nothing east but the sea and the end. And the king almost listened. He was so cold, so tired. The valley behind him was warm and green and full of people who loved him. It would have been so easy to turn around. He stopped. He stood in the snow. He thought about it. And then he reached into his robe and felt the flower. Still there, still fresh, somehow against his heart. The last gift of the one who understood, and he remembered why he was leaving. Not from shame anymore, from love, to leave them the law, clean, without him. He tucked the flower back, and he turned his face east again into the wind. No, he said quietly, to the cold and to the dark god inside it. I am not turning back. And the wind for a moment faltered. It had not expected that. Higher still, the snow grew so deep that the king's companions could go no further, for he had not left entirely alone. A few faithful servants and craftsmen had followed him out of love, refusing to be sent home. And here the story turns very sad and very tender. The cold of the high pass was too much for them. One by one his companions could not go on. The king knelt by each of them in the snow and held their hands and grieved. He had spent his whole life refusing to let anyone die for him, and now, on the road out, his most faithful had followed him into the cold and would not leave. He could not save them. He could only stay until the end and remember each name. This is the part Tezcatlipoca had been waiting for. Surely now, he thought. Surely now the king will break. Surely now he will curse the gods or rage or run home. Loss like this breaks anyone. He drew close to watch the king shatter, but the king did not break. He wept, fully, openly, the way the strong finally weep when there is no one left to be strong for. And then he stood, and he buried his companions with his own hands in the snow, and he went on. And Tezcatlipoca, watching, felt something he had never felt before. Not triumph, something closer to awe. He had taken everything from this man, and the man had not turned cruel. Grief had only made him gentler. The dark god did not understand it at all. We will pause there. The worst of the cold is almost past. Beyond the snow pass, the land falls away toward the warm east, toward the sea. The king has lost his companions, his city, his certainty, and still he carries one fresh flower east. Rest now if you are resting. The climb is over. From here the road goes down and warmer, toward the place where the story ends and begins. But that is for another night. Tonight, leave him at the top of the world, looking east. As he stood there, the first star pricked out in the deepening east, the morning star low and bright, exactly where he was bound. He looked at it for a long time. Soon, he thought, soon I will go where you go. There is a kind of peace that only comes on the far side of losing everything. Not happiness, something quieter and deeper. The peace of having nothing left to protect, and so nothing left to fear. The king had found it, up there in the snow, and behind him in the snow, Tezcatlipoca made a decision of his own. He would not follow further. There was nothing left to take. He had set out to destroy the king, and instead he had watched the king become something he could not touch. He had won the city. Tula was his now, to do with as he pleased. But standing in the snow, watching the gentle king walk into peace, the dark god understood that he had also, somehow, lost. He turned west and went back to claim his hollow prize. So now the king walks east alone, truly alone and unfollowed. The dark god is gone. The road ahead is warm and gentle and short. There is only the descent and the shore and the morning star waiting. We are near the end of the first half of his road. Maybe you have walked a road like that. The road after the worst has already happened. When the dread is finally behind you, and what is left is just the quiet walking, and the strange light feeling of having survived your own undoing. He walked for days through the warm lands. People came out to see him pass. They had heard the stories of the gentle king walking to the sea. He blessed them, and taught a last few things, and walked on, leaving small wonders in his wake. And then one evening the road crested a low rise, and there it was, the sea, the vast bright eastern sea, stretching to the edge of the world, with the last light burning gold and coral across it. He had reached the shore at last. He walked down to the black sand. He took off his sandals and felt the cool, wet shore beneath his feet, and he stood at the very edge where the warm sea ran up over his toes and slid away again, and he wept, not from grief now, from arrival. This was the place. Lilan Tlapalan, the old tellers called it, the land of the black and the red, the place where the day ends and the night begins, the threshold between this world and whatever the morning star goes to when it leaves the sky. He had come to the edge of everything. Behind him, the whole world he had built and lost. Ahead, only the sea and the sky and the bright star low over the water. He had walked the entire length of his fall and arrived, somehow at peace. And there he stopped. The walking was done. What came next was something else, a leaving deeper than any road. But that is for tomorrow night. Tonight, leave him there, at peace, at the edge of the sea, beneath the faithful star. He has arrived. Rest. Last night we left the king at the shore, at peace. But peace in the old stories is rarely the end. Far behind him, in the city he had left, something was going wrong, and it would reach him here, at the edge of the sea. In Tula, Tezcatlipoca had taken the empty throne. But a throne is only stone, the thing he had wanted to be loved as the gentle king was loved, that he could not take. The people did not love him. They feared him. And fear is a cold meal. Without the gentle king's law to hold them, the old hungers crept back into the city. The whispers of blood, the priests who said the sun must be fed, and Tezcatlipoca, who had no law of flowers, did not stop them. Slowly, Tula began to change. The old priest Huimak tried to hold the law, one flower every morning alone, while the others turned away. But one old man cannot hold what a whole city has decided to forget. The gentle age was ending exactly as the calendars had warned. And here is the new turn in the story, the thing that will reach the king at the shore. The people, frightened by the dark age coming, began to long for the gentle king again. And their longing took the shape of a prayer sent east on the wind. "Come back," the prayer said. "We were wrong to look away. We forgive you, we who were never the ones who needed to forgive. Come back and be our king." And the wind carried that prayer east, over the snow pass, down to the shore, to the old man at the sea. And this was the new threat. Though it did not look like a threat at all, it looked like everything he wanted, the chance to go back, to be loved again, to undo the leaving. The cruelest temptation of all is the one that offers to give you back what you lost. He stood at the waterline a long time with that prayer in his ears. He could go back. They wanted him. He could climb the pass again and walk into the plaza and be the gentle king once more and pretend the Night of the Cup had never happened. This is the part the myths never make obvious. It would not have been wrong to go back. They wanted him. He loved them. Another man would have gone and been welcomed and called it a happy ending. The story would let him, but he knew himself too well. He understood something the prayer did not. If he went back, he would go back as a man who could fall. They would love him, yes, but they would also always be watching, waiting, afraid, and he would spend the rest of his days trying to prove the cup had not been real. The law was already theirs, he reminded himself. He had given it to them. If they wanted the gentle age back, they did not need him to return. They needed only to choose it themselves. His coming back would not save them. It might even stop them from saving themselves. So he made his answer to the prayer on the wind. Not no, something gentler than no, not yet. He sent back west, not as I am, but watch the morning star. When you see it rise, that is me, keeping my promise. I will always be coming back, just not as your king. Far to the west, in Tula, the people felt the answer arrive. Not the king at the gate, just a stillness and a certainty, and the morning star burning a little brighter the next dawn, and the old priest Huemak wept and understood and kept placing his single flower. The gentle age did not come roaring back, but a seed of it survived, in the few who kept the law and watched the star. That was the king's true gift, not his presence, but a promise faithful enough to keep people gentle even in the dark times coming. And Tezcatlipoca, on his cold stone throne, felt it too. He had taken the city, and yet here, somehow, the gentle king still reached it, from the far shore, through a star, with a promise. The dark god had won the place and lost the thing that mattered, again. There is an old truth folded into this, and I will not explain it. Only set it down beside you. You can take a person's place. You can take their throne, their city, their crown, but you cannot take the love they earned. That stays where they earned it. It does not transfer. Back at the shore, the king felt lighter than he had since the Night of the Cup. The last temptation was behind him. He had been offered everything back, and chosen instead to keep his promise to the star. There was nothing left now but the leaving itself. But the leaving would not be simple. The sea does not part for a tired old man. To cross from this world to the next, from the shore to the star, he would need to let go of the very last things he carried, and to do something he had never done before. For there was still one part of him that had not let go, the feather cloak. The green Quetzal cloak he had worn since before the city was built. It was the last of his old self. To become the star, he would have to give even that away, but not tonight. He sat down on the black sand to rest before the last thing. He was very tired now, but it was a good tiredness, the tiredness of a long journey nearly done. He watched the stars come out one by one over the sea, and he was not afraid. Maybe you know that good tiredness. The kind that comes at the end of something hard you saw all the way through. Not the heavy tiredness of giving up. The clean tiredness of having finished. The king felt it on the sand, under the stars, and it was almost like joy. He thought about his life sitting there. Not the fall, not the cup. He thought about the good things, the first maize shoot, the singing shell in the land of the dead, the children who followed his shadow, the flower in his robe, a life mostly spent being gentle. It was enough. It was enough. That is a rare thing to be able to say and mean it. Not perfect, not unbroken, just enough. A life that, weighed in full, came out gentle. The king sat with that and let the peace of it settle all the way down. And as he sat, he began to make ready. He gathered the few treasures he still carried, small things of jade and gold and craft, things the people of Tula had given him over the years. He would not take them where he was going. He would give them back to the world. This will be the work of the final road, the giving away of the last things, the freeing of the last bonds, until there is nothing left to hold him to the earth, and he can rise. But that is tomorrow's part of the story. Tonight he only gathers and rests. So the turning point of the whole story is this quiet one, here on the sand. Not the cup, not the mirror. This, the moment he was offered his old life back, and chose instead to keep going forward into something new, and let the old life become a promise. There is a kind of courage we almost never name. Not the courage to fight or to hold on, the courage to let a good thing end well, instead of clinging to it until it goes sour. The king had that courage. It is, I think, the rarest kind there is. Maybe you have had to find that courage yourself. The courage to close a good chapter on purpose before it could spoil. If you have, then you already understand the king better than the priests who watched him leave. You know it is not defeat, it is a kind of grace. So leave him here tonight, on the dark sand, his treasures gathered, his choice made, his peace complete. The hardest things are behind him now. What remains is almost beautiful. Tomorrow, the giving away, and the fire, and the rising tonight, only the calm before it. Rest now, the way he rests. Nothing left to fear, nothing left to prove, just the sea, and the stars, and the faithful light low over the water, waiting patiently for him to be ready. We are nearly at the end of his road, but not tonight. Tonight, just the calm. Morning came to the shore, soft and gray. The king woke on the black sand to the sound of the sea breathing in and out. The morning star was still there, low over the water, faithful as ever, and he knew that today was the day of letting go. He began with the treasures, the jade, the gold, the small crafted wonders of Tula. One by one he carried them to the edge of the sea, and he did not throw them away in sorrow. He gave them gently, the way you give a gift, back to the deep water. There is an old belief that some of those treasures are still down there, off that eastern shore, that the seafloor there glints with the gentle king's last gifts. Whether that is true, I cannot say, but it is a beautiful thing to imagine, isn't it? When the treasures were given, he turned to the living things he had kept. All this long road, a few of the bright birds of Tula in a woven cage, quetzals and macaws, the feathered jewels of his city. He could not take them where he was going. So he opened the cage, and the birds rose, all at once, in a burst of green and red and gold. They lifted off the shore and scattered across the morning sky, calling, free. The king stood beneath them with his face turned up, and he laughed, that rare, full laugh, to see them go. That is who he was, all the way to the end. Even letting go of the last bright things he loved, he did it with joy, because their freedom mattered more to him than his keeping them. He gave away his beauty and was glad. Few of us could. Now there was little left. The staff, the white robe, the conch shell at his chest, and the fresh flower beside it, and the feather cloak, the green quetzal cloak, the last of his old self, the hardest thing of all to give away. He sat back down on the sand to gather himself before the last giving, and as he sat he found that he was not alone after all. A child had come down to the shore, a small one from a fishing village nearby, who had heard the gentle king was at the sea. The child was not afraid. Children rarely were, of him. The child came and sat down beside the old man on the sand and asked, simply, "Why are you sitting at the sea?" And the king smiled and thought about how to answer a question that large, that simply, "I'm waiting to go home," he said. The child frowned. "But where is your home?" And the king pointed east, across the water, to where the morning star still hung low and bright over the sea. "There," he said, "I'm going to live in that light," and the child looked and was satisfied. Children understand these things more easily than we do. The child did not ask how or argue that people cannot live in stars. The child simply nodded and said, "That is a good home," and the king laughed softly, because the child was right. It was a good home. And then the king did one last gentle thing, the kind of thing he could not help doing. He took the fresh flower from his robe, the one Xochiquetzal had given him, still somehow alive after the whole long road, and he gave it to the child. "Keep this," he said, "and when you grow up, plant flowers, bring them to the temples instead of harder things. That is the whole of what I learned, and it is yours now." The child took the flower and held it carefully and did not understand yet, but would, one day. This is the part the myths never make obvious. He did not pass his law to a king, or a priest, or an army. He gave it to a child on a beach, one flower, one small pair of hands. That is how gentle things actually survive, not by power, by being handed on quietly. Then the king told the child, gently, to go home now, back up the beach to the village. And the child went, clutching the flower, turning back once to wave, and the king waved back, and watched the small figure climb away over the dunes, and was alone again with the sea. Now it was time. The treasures given, the birds freed, the flower passed on, the law handed to a child. There was nothing left to settle, Only the last giving, the feather cloak, his old self, and then the leaving itself. He rose and faced the sea, and was ready. But the leaving is the largest part, and it deserves a clear night to itself. So we will pause here, with the king ready at the water, the last thing not yet given, the sea waiting. He is calm. He is unafraid. Hold that and rest. The hardest road is behind him. When we returned to him, the sea wind had risen, warm and steady out of the west, as if the world itself were urging him on. He stood in it, and felt it move through the green feathers of his cloak. The wind had always known him best. Now it had come to see him off. He thought of all the years the wind had walked before him, sweeping the roads clean for the rain. He had served the wind, and the wind had served him. And now at the end, it had come not to be commanded, but simply to be with him. Even the wind did not want him to go alone. And then he saw it, out on the water, drifting in toward the shore on the wind, a raft, not built by any human hands, a raft woven entirely of serpents, green and living, their bodies braided together into a vessel, come to carry him east. The sea had sent his way across. It was a fitting vessel for the feathered serpent to be carried over the water by serpents, the earth-bound creatures, toward the sky he was about to join. The two halves of him, earth and sky, meeting one last time at the waterline. He waded out and stepped aboard. The raft held him easily. It turned of its own accord away from the shore, toward the morning star and the open sea. And slowly, gently, it began to carry him out across the water, away from the land, away from the world, into the bright east. He looked back once, just once, at the dark shore growing smaller, and beyond it, somewhere far over the mountains, the city he had built and lost. He looked back with love, not longing, and then he turned forward, to the star, and did not look back again. Maybe that is the hardest skill of all, to look back at what you have lost with love, and then to turn forward anyway, not to pretend it did not matter, not to drown in it either, just to honor it and turn. The king did it on the raft, and so, sometimes must we. The raft carried him a long way out, until the shore was only a thin dark line behind, and the sea was all around, and the sky was vast above, and the morning star burned close now, larger than he had ever seen it, low and bright over the water ahead. And here on the open water, beneath the close bright star, he gave the last thing. He lifted the green feather cloak from his shoulders, the cloak of his whole old self, the king he had been, and he held it out over the water, and he let it go. The cloak caught the wind and lifted, green and gold, spreading wide over the water like a great bird, like all the birds he had freed, and it floated there a moment, shimmering. And the king stood bare, shouldered in his plain white robe, just a man now, lighter than he had been in a lifetime. That was the last of it, the last of the old self. He had given away the treasures, the birds, the flower, the law, and now the cloak. He stood on the serpent raft with nothing left but the white robe and the conch shell and his own quiet heart, and he was finally ready to rise. We will let him stand there a moment, ready beneath the great star. The next part is the rising itself, and it is the most beautiful part of all. But it is also the end, and the end deserves its own clear night. So rest here, with the king ready on the water, light and unafraid. Before we go on, stay a breath longer in this stillness. There is something worth noticing here. All his life, the king's gift was giving, and his whole last day was simply the same gift, made complete. He spent his ending the way he spent his life. That is a rare and beautiful symmetry. Maybe you know someone whose ending matched their living like that. It is one of the most consoling things there is to witness. A person who was gentle, dying gently. A person who gave, giving to the last. It tells you the gentleness was real, all the way down. The king's was. The sea was very calm now. The wind had settled to a whisper. The serpent raft had stopped, far out on the water, directly beneath the great low star, as if it had brought him exactly where he needed to be and could go no further. This was the place, the threshold itself. He looked up at the star, and for the first time he understood it fully. It was not a place he was going to, it was a thing he was going to become. The faithful light he had taught his people to watch, he would be that light now. The promise and the keeper of the promise, both at once. And so the gentlest God prepared to give the very last thing of all, himself, not in despair, not as punishment, as a gift, the final gift, the one that would let him keep his promise to return every dawn forever. He closed his eyes, and he opened his arms to the star. We will stop right here, at the threshold of the rising, with his arms open to the star. The next breath is the transformation itself, and I want to give it a whole clear night so that you can be fully here for it. Rest now. He is ready. The star is waiting. Nothing is lost. But before the rising, let me hold you here in the calm a little longer. There is no rush. The star has waited 3,000 years. It can wait while you settle deeper into the dark, while your breathing slows, while the day finally lets go of you completely. Feel how far we have come together. From a tired day into a golden city, down into the land of the dead, through the snow, to the edge of the sea. A whole life walked, just to arrive at this calm water under this faithful light. You walked it with him. You are nearly home too. The king breathed slowly out on the raft, in and out. The way you are breathing now, there was nothing left to do but be here, beneath the star, at peace. And so he was, and so, perhaps, are you. Let us stay in that shared breath a moment before the light. When you are ready, and only then, we will let the light come. But first, let me pause the story once more, the way the old tellers did, to tell you how this very journey was remembered and carried and kept alive across the long centuries. This story was not written down at first. It was carried in the mouth, from teller to teller, parent to child, across more years than anyone can count. Each teller kept the shape of it and added their own small light to it and passed it on. That is why there are many versions. In some, he sails on the raft. In some, he steps into a fire and his heart becomes the star. In some, he is a god from the start. In others, a king who became one. The tellers did not worry about which was true. They knew they were all true. Later, they did write it down, painted it really in folding books of bark paper, in bright pictures and signs. The feathered serpent wins across those pages still. In museums now, his green plumes faded, but his journey clear. The teller's light caught and kept. And carved, too. Across all of Mesoamerica, on temple after temple, the feathered serpent wins along the stone. Some of those carvings are older than this story, and some are younger, but they all reach for the same thing, the creature pulled between earth and sky. So when you hear this story tonight, you are doing the oldest thing. You are a teller now too. Even just by listening, the light passes to you. Keep its shape, and add your own. Now, gently, back to the raft, and the king, and the star. The light is ready to come. The first light came not from the sky, but from him. A soft glow began along the edges of his white robe, faint at first, like the very first thread of dawn. He did not flinch. He had been letting go all his life. This was only the last, easiest letting go. The glow grew. It spread up his arms, still open to the star, and over his chest where the conch shell hung, and the shell itself began to shine, as if remembering the song it once sang in the land of the dead. The light gathered in him, warm and gold, and he was not afraid. We will let the light keep rising slowly. There is no hurry in it, and there should be none in you. The transformation is gentle, the way everything about him was gentle. Stay with the soft growing glow, and let your own breath slow to meet it. The end, when it comes, is only light. As the light grew, something else happened, soft and strange. His form began to ease, to loosen, the way the feathered serpent had always been two things at once. The man and the serpent, the earth and the sky, gently coming apart and together, becoming pure light at the seam. The serpent of light lifted from the raft. It rose slowly off the water, coiling upward through the soft air, green and gold and shining, the most beautiful thing the sea had ever held. It turned its calm, bright head toward the star and began gently to climb the sky. This is the darkest moment turned to its opposite. The lowest point of his story, the leaving, the loss of everything, has become the most radiant. Stay here, in the rising light. But this beautiful climb deserves its own night to finish. So rest, with the serpent of light halfway to the star. Let me hold you in the rising a while longer, because there is no need to reach the end quickly. The serpent of light climbs so slowly that it hardly seems to move at all. The whole sky has gone soft and golden. The sea is a sheet of calm. Everything is gentle here. Far to the west, in Tula, the old priest Huimax stepped out before dawn, as he did every morning now, to place his single flower and watch the eastern sky. And he saw it, a new brightness gathering low in the east, brighter than the star had ever been. And he knew. "He is keeping his promise," the old priest whispered. "Look, he is becoming the morning star." And he placed his flower, and he woke the faithful, and they came out into the cool dark, and turned their faces east, and watched their gentle king begin to rise into the sky he had given them. Even the dark god saw it. Tezcatlipoca came out onto the cold high terrace of the city he had won, and looked east, and watched the gentle king becoming the brightest light in the sky. And the old tellers say that, for once, the smoking mirror did not turn away. He simply watched. Whatever was between them, the jealousy, the cup, the mirror, the long cold following, it was over now. The dark god had his city, and the gentle king had the sky, and the morning star would rise over Tula every dawn, and the night sky would always belong to Tezcatlipoca. Each had their place at last. That is an old kind of peace, the kind these stories understand, not the enemy destroyed, not the wrong undone, just each thing settling at last into its rightful place. The light to the dawn, the dark to the night, and both of them, somehow, necessary. Both somehow part of the whole. But we have leapt ahead, to the dawn his rising made. Let us go back to the rising itself, still happening, out over the eastern sea, in its own slow, soft time. The serpent of light is still climbing. There is still a little way to go before it reaches the star. As the serpent of light climbed, the things he had given away seemed to rise with it in spirit. The freed birds somewhere, calling at dawn, the flower in the child's hands, far up the beach, the treasures glinting in the deep, the law, alive in the faithful, all of it, lifting as he lifted. Nothing he gave was lost. That is the quiet secret of his whole life, made visible here at the end. Everything he let go of stayed in the world, blessing it. Only he himself rose away. And even he did not really leave. He only changed into a light that returns every single dawn. We are very near the rising now. The serpent of light is almost at the star. But I want you fully here for the final joining, so rest once more, just before it. He is nearly home. The star is nearly his. Nothing is lost, and nothing hurts, and the light is almost complete. Let the calm hold you here. There is nothing left in this story that can hurt. The hard parts are all behind. The cup, the mirror, the snow, the loss. What remains is only light, rising to meet light. The gentlest possible ending, for the gentlest of all the gods. Breathe slowly here, the way the light moves in, and the glow brightens. Out and it settles. There is no effort left in any of it. The whole long road has come down to this soft meeting of two lights, high above a calm sea, while a tired world below begins gently to sleep. Maybe, somewhere in this, you have stopped thinking of it as only the king's story. Maybe it has started to feel a little like your own. The letting go, the leaving well, the hope that what you gave will stay, and bless, and rise. If so, that is the oldest gift of these stories. Take it with you. The serpent of light reached the great star, and it did not crash into it or vanish into it. It simply joined it, the way a stream joins the sea, the way one warmth joins another. The two lights became one light, low and brilliant over the eastern water, and the rising was nearly complete. For a moment, the whole sky held still around that one bright light. The sea was glass. The air did not stir. It was as if the world were pausing to witness the gentlest God take his place in it forever. And then, softly, the first true line of dawn began to glow behind the star. We will pause here, at the joining, with the king now part of the morning star and the dawn just beginning behind him. The transformation is done. What remains is only the first dawn of the new way of things, and the meaning of it all, gathered softly. But that is for another night. Rest now. He is home. Stay in this first dawn a while. There is no need to leave it. The hardest things are over, and the king is home, and the light he became is rising for the very first time over a quiet sea. You have walked the whole road to get here. You have earned this calm. Rest in it fully. On the shore, far below, the empty serpent raft drifted gently back toward the black sand, its work done. The serpents would slip back into the warm grass, the way they always had, and the white robe, light as a memory, would settle on the water and drift, and dissolve into the dawn. And the child from the village came down to the shore again at dawn, the fresh flower still in hand, and saw the bright new light low over the sea, and somehow understood that it was the kind old man who had gone home into the star. And the child held up the flower toward the light. It was the first offering of the new age. A flower, lifted to the light by a child freely, with love. Exactly the law the king had spent his whole life keeping. And so, in the very first dawn of his rising, his gentle law was already alive in the world, in the smallest of hands. That is the whole of it, really. A god went down to the dead and carried us up. A god kept a gentle law his whole life. A god fell and instead of clinging or raging, left well and became a light. And a child, the next dawn, lifted a flower. The story closes its own circle, softly. We will rest here, near the end. The king is the morning star now. The child has made the first offering. The dawn is spreading gentle across the world. There is so little hardness left in the story, almost none. Stay in the soft dawn, and let it carry you toward sleep. From that first dawn onward, the morning star rose faithfully over the lands of the gentle king, farmers planted by it. Travelers steered by it. Children were told when they asked about the bright low light before sunrise, that it was a kind old king, keeping a promise to come back every day. And the promise held. 3,000 years later, the same star still rises in the same east, low and bright before the sun. You have seen it yourself, surely, on some early morning, that one steady light that outlasts all the others into the dawn. That is the one, that is him, still keeping his word. There is something deeply comforting in that, I think, that the gentlest God did not become a distant, unreachable thing, but the most familiar light in the sky, the one anyone can find, the one that always comes back. He made himself into a promise we can all still see, every single dawn. So the next time the day asks too much of you, the way today might have, you can do what the people of Tula learned to do. Step outside before the sun. Find that one steady light low in the east, and remember that even a god who fell once rose again, faithful, gentle, every dawn. We are almost at the close of the story itself. What remains is to gather, gently, what it all might mean, though the old tellers would say a story like this means itself and needs no explaining. Still, there are a few quiet thoughts worth holding. We will hold them softly on the nights to come. For now, simply rest in what you have. A God who was gentle, a God who gave, a God who left well and became a light and a star, low in your own eastern sky tomorrow, that is older than any city and still faithfully rising. Let that be enough to carry you down towards sleep. The story is told. The king is home in the light. The dawn has come. From here, the nights grow softer still, only quiet meaning and gentle legacy, and a long peaceful good night remain. But first, let me pause once more, as the tellers always did, to show you how far this old promise has reached. Long after the gentle king became the star, his promise to return cast a very long shadow across history, because the people remembered. They told their children that one day perhaps the feathered serpent might come back not only as a light, but as himself, walking out of the east. And so they watched the east. Generation after generation, they kept the prophecy alive that a fair and gentle figure might one day return across the sea in a certain year to restore the old gentle age. It was a hope, mostly, a way of keeping the king close. A door left open in the heart. That hope shaped real history in ways gentle and not gentle. When strangers did one day come across the eastern sea, the old prophecy of return became tangled in those events. Historians still untangle it. But that is a heavier story, for the waking world, not for tonight's quiet. What matters for us, here in the dark, is gentler. It is simply that the promise was kept in the heart for thousands of years, that a people loved a gentle king so much they watched the east for him across the centuries. That kind of faithfulness is its own quiet wonder. So hold the gentle part of the legacy tonight, and let the heavy part rest. A promise kept in the heart. A star watched across the centuries, a gentleness that refused to be forgotten. Now, softly, back to the close of our own quiet telling, and the long good night ahead. The bright star climbed a little higher as the dawn grew. Soon it would fade into the blue of full morning, the way it does every day, but it was not gone. It would only be resting behind the light, the way you are about to rest. And it would return, faithful the next dawn. It always does. There is a gentleness in how the morning star leaves. It does not vanish in alarm. It simply softens and dims and lets the day take over, trusting fully that its time will come again. The king learned to leave like that. Maybe, drifting off now, you can too. Just soften and let the day take over. All across the gentle king's lands the day was beginning, cooking fires lit, maize ground, children waking, the ordinary good of an ordinary day, the very thing the king had loved most and protected longest. His gift was simply this: more ordinary good mornings for more ordinary people. It is no small thing. That is what he gave, in the end. Not miracles, mornings. Enough quiet, gentle mornings that a child could grow up unafraid and plant flowers instead of harder things, and tell their own child, one day, about the kind old star. Mornings, handed down, the humblest, deepest gift there is. We have nearly reached the end of the telling, just a little further, and we will let the story rest entirely, and let you rest with it. The hard road is long behind, the light is risen, the day is gentle. There is nothing left now but the soft, slow close and your own slow breath. Let your breathing slow to match the morning. There is no hurry anywhere in this story now. The king is home. The promise is kept. The star will rise tomorrow without any effort from you at all. You can let everything go, the way he did, and simply rest in the gentle light. Far out over the sea, the empty raft had reached the shore, and the serpent slipped quietly back into the warm grass, and the beach was still. The white robe had dissolved into the dawn. There was no trace left of the leaving, only the star and the day, and the gentle ongoing world. It was as if he had never struggled at all, as if there had only ever been a gentle king, and a gentle law, and a gentle light in the dawn sky. The pain washed away with the tide, and only the love remained. That is what time does, kindly, with stories like this. It keeps the love and lets the pain go. Maybe that is a comfort to carry into sleep, that the hard parts of your own story too will one day wash out with the tide, and the love will be what remains. The pain is real now, but it is not what lasts. What lasts is gentler. The king's story promises it. So, I think, does yours. The telling is almost done now. Only a few soft words remain before we let the whole thing rest. Stay here in the calm dawn with me a little longer. There is nowhere else to be, nothing left to do. Just the gentle close of a very old story, and you drifting softly toward sleep. We will let the climax of his rising stand as the heart of it all, the moment the gentlest God, having given everything away, became a light that returns every dawn. Hold that image as we move, on the coming nights, into the quiet meaning and the long good night. For now, rest, he is risen. All is well. And so let us hold the rising once more, whole and complete, as the true close of his journey. The serpent of light, climbing the soft sky, the two lights joining into one, the first dawn breaking gentle behind them. The whole long road resolved into a single faithful star, low over the eastern sea. This was greater than any battle could have been. No sword won this, no army. The gentlest possible act, a giving away so complete that a man became a light, turned the lowest moment of the story into the highest. That is the kind of victory these old tellers prized most, the quiet kind, the lasting kind. All across the world below, in Tula and on the shore, and in the small villages, the faithful turned their faces up to that risen light and felt the gentle age was not entirely gone after all, that it had simply risen into the sky, where no one could ever take it away again. And the child with the flower stood on the shore and watched until the star faded into the blue, and then turned and walked home up the beach to plant the flower by the door, the way the kind old man had said. And so the gentle law took root, in soil, in a child, in the dawn of a new age. That is the climax and the heart of the whole story, a God risen into faithful light, and a child planting a flower in the dawn. Hold them both. They are the same thing, really. Gentleness, kept and handed on. Rest now, fully. The hard road is over. On the coming nights, only soft meaning and a long good night remain. The story is told. Tonight we only gather what it leaves behind. Softly. The way you turn a smooth stone in your hand at the end of a long walk, not to study it, just to feel its shape one more time. Think first of the cloak, the feathered serpent, earth and sky in one body, heavy and reaching at the same time. That was him, and it is us. We are all pulled down by what holds us and up by what calls us, both at once. There's no shame in being pulled both ways. That is not a flaw to fix. It is simply what it feels like to be alive. The gentle king carried it his whole life, and it did not break him. It made him the bridge between the two. Think next of the vow. No blood, only flowers. The hardest thing he did was not a great deed. It was holding one gentle line every day when everything around him said gentleness was weakness, the quiet courage of staying kind. That was his real strength. And think of how the vow broke, not through evil, through tiredness and a kind voice and one cup on one night, after a lifetime of holding firm. That is how good people fall, quietly, humanly. It is worth being gentle with yourself about that. The old story does not hate him for the cup. Notice that. It does not call him a sinner, it simply lets him be a good person who had one bad night, and then it watches gently to see what he does next. The fall is never the whole of anyone. What he did next is the real heart of it. He did not rage, he did not cling, he did not pretend it had not happened. He grieved it honestly, and then he chose to leave well, so that the good he had built could go on without the weight of him. Leaving well. We do not talk about it much. We praise holding on, fighting, staying, but sometimes the most loving thing is to let a good thing end before you spoil it, and to walk away with grace. The king knew that. It is one of the quietest wisdoms there is. And think of all he gave away on that last road. The treasures to the sea, the birds to the sky, the flower to a child, the cloak to the wind, himself to the star. His whole ending was one long act of giving. He spent his death the way he spent his life. There is a deep consolation in that a person can be so wholly themselves that even their ending matches their living. The gentle king died gentle. The giver gave to the last. It tells you the gentleness was true all the way down. Real, not performed. Think, too, of what he became. Not a distant throne in some far heaven. The morning star. The most familiar light in the sky. The one anyone can find. He made himself into the most reachable comfort there is, free to all every single dawn. And the kind of light he chose to be matters, not the sun, blazing and impossible to look at. The morning star, soft enough to gaze upon, faithful enough to count on, a gentle light for a gentle God. Even his transformation kept his nature. Think of the promise inside the star. It leaves every morning, swallowed by the sun, and it returns every dawn without fail. Leaving and returning, leaving and returning. He made his very being into a promise that what goes away can come back. That is a profound comfort to hang in a sky. And think of how his gentle law actually survived, not through power, not through a king or an army, through a child on a beach holding a flower. Gentle things last by being handed on quietly, one small pair of hands to the next. That is how they have always lasted. That is how this story reached you. Even the dark god has something to teach here at the end. Tezcatlipoca won the city and lost the thing he wanted. You can take someone's place, but never the love they earned. Love does not transfer with a throne. It stays where it was made. That is worth remembering in a hungry world. And there is peace, even, in how the two gods ended, not one destroying the other, each settling into a rightful place. The gentle king to the dawn, the dark god to the night. Both necessary, both part of the turning whole. The old stories rarely ask us to hate even the shadow. So what does the whole thing mean? The tellers would say it means itself. But if you want one thread to hold, be gentle while you can, give freely, and when your time comes to leave, leave well. And trust that the good you made will rise without you, and return. Maybe that is more than a story about a god. Maybe it is a small instruction for being a person. How to hold a gentle line. How to forgive your own one bad night. How to give, how to leave, how to become. In the end, a light that others can steer by. He showed us all of it. You do not have to hold any of it tonight. It will keep. Stories like this leave their meaning in you slowly, the way water shapes stone, not in one night, but over many quiet returns. Just let it rest in you now. It knows its own way down. We will leave the meaning here, gathered and gentle, on the coming nights, only the long afterlife of the story, and a soft good night remain. For now, rest in what you have, a gentle God, a faithful star, and a quiet instruction folded into the dark for being a person. Sleep on it softly. A story this gentle does not simply end. It seeps outward, into stone, into language, into the way a whole world looked at the sky. Tonight, softly, we follow where the feathered serpent went after the telling was done. He was carved everywhere, across the whole of Mesoamerica. For thousands of years, the feathered serpent winds along the temples. at Teotihuacan, at Chichen Itza, at Tula itself. The same green creature, reaching between earth and sky, in city after city, age after age. Different peoples knew him by different names. The Maya called him Kukulkan, others had their own words, but it was the same reaching creature, the same green plumes, the same bridge between the ground and the heavens, a god shared across many tongues and many centuries. There is one wonder worth picturing as you drift. At a certain great pyramid, twice a year at the equinox, the afternoon sun throws a row of shadow triangles down the stairway, and a serpent of light seems to ripple down the stone steps and join its carved stone head at the bottom. The people who built that pyramid arranged the very stones so that, twice a year, the feathered serpent would come down out of the sky as light and rejoin the earth. They built his whole story into a building. That is how deeply they loved him. Stone-shaped to catch a god in sunlight. He lived on in the bright books too, the painted codices folding bark paper pages where the feathered serpent wins in red and green and gold. A few survived the centuries. He is still there, in glass cases now, his plumes faded but his journey clear, waiting quietly to be read. And he lives in the sky still, which is the truest legacy of all. The planet we call Venus, the morning star, low and bright in the east before sunrise. To the people who told this story, that was him, and in a way it still is. You can find him there tomorrow. He has not missed a dawn in 3,000 years. His name still travels too. It is spoken in classrooms, in museums, in stories like this one, in tongues he never heard. A gentle god from a vanished golden age, still reaching across time, still pulling people to look up and wonder. The light he became is, in a way, still spreading. And now he lives in you a little as well. You have carried his story for an evening. You are one more teller in the long chain, one more pair of hands the gentle law has passed through. Tomorrow, when you see that bright low star, you will know whose light it is. That is legacy too. So that is where the feathered serpent went, into stone, into books, into the sky, into language, and into you. Not bad. For a gentle king who once thought his one bad night had ended everything, he left more behind than he ever knew. They almost always do. Rest now, only the Goodnight remains. So we come to the end. There is nothing left to do now but rest. The story is safe. The star is risen. You can let the whole day go. Let your breathing slow. There is nothing to hold on to, nothing to finish. The morning star will rise tomorrow without any help from you at all. There's another story waiting for another night, somewhere colder, perhaps older. A different kind of fire, but not tonight. Tonight is only this gentle dawn and your slow breath, and the soft light settling over everything. We'll be here when you're ready. Another old story, another quiet night like this one. No hurry, no test, just somewhere gentle to land. If you drifted off before the star rose, that is all right. The gentle king would not mind. He watched over sleeping people for a very long time. Let the last of the day dissolve now, the way the white robe dissolved into the dawn. Nothing held, nothing carried. Just soft light and rest. The sea is calm, the sky is soft, the star is faithful, and you are safe and warm and held here in the quiet dark. Sleep now. The gentlest of all the gods is watching the dawn for you. There is nothing left to do but close your eyes. Good night, rest well. The star will be there in the morning. It always is.